Animal rights activists are pushing for more humane ways of killing the non-native species of snakes. They say there are better methods.
You ever seen something rip the head clean off a 13-foot apex predator, then try to hide the body? This isn't some horror movie. It's happening right now in the wilds of Florida. Something out there is decapitating pythons. Yeah, the same snakes eating deer and alligators. And no one knows exactly what's doing it, or why. Welcome to Florida's Everglades, where something just started fighting back. The story picks up in December 2022, when a group of biologists ventured deep into the swamps near Naples, Florida. They were following a radio signal, tracking a Burmese python known as Loki. Loki wasn't just part of the study, he was the key. Scientists had implanted a transmitter inside him and released him into the wild. His job? Find the females. During breeding season, male pythons roam far in search of a mate. Researchers use that instinct to their advantage. By following the males, they can pinpoint nesting sites and destroy the eggs before they hatch. The tactic is called the Judas technique, because the snake leads them straight to its own kind. But this time, something went wrong. Instead of finding a nest, the team found Loki himself, and he was dead. What they saw was not natural. Loki's body had been stretched out unnaturally, and his head was missing. Part of his neck was torn away, and he was partially buried under pine needles, almost as if something or someone had attempted to cover the scene. This wasn't the work of decay or the elements. It looked deliberate. Something had killed this 52-pound predator and tried to hide the evidence. Burmese pythons are known as apex predators in South Florida. They swallow whole animals, from birds to deer, even alligators. Their presence in the Everglades has thrown the local ecosystem into disarray. To understand the fight brewing in the Florida wilderness, you have to go back nearly a century. The Burmese python invasion didn't happen overnight. It began quietly, almost unnoticed, with isolated sightings as early as the 1930s. Back then, the idea of giant snakes living in the U.S. seemed absurd. Things escalated in the 1970s. Exotic pets were booming. People were buying monkeys, parrots, iguanas, and yes, snakes. The Burmese python, native to Southeast Asia, became a popular choice. Young pythons are docile and visually striking, making them appealing pets. But what many buyers didn't fully grasp is just how big these snakes could get. Within a few years, their cute pet snake could stretch 13 to 16 feet and weigh as much as a grown man. Unable or unwilling to care for such massive reptiles, many owners did what seemed easiest. They released them straight into the Florida wild. Florida's Everglades offered ideal conditions. Swamps, thick brush, and abundant prey made it the perfect hunting ground for a cold-blooded predator. Then, in 1992, nature delivered the knockout blow. Hurricane Andrew struck South Florida and obliterated a python breeding facility. Hundreds of snakes escaped, and many found their way into the wild. That's when the invasion truly began. Through the 1990s, pythons were spotted more often, but experts argued over whether they were reproducing. It wasn't until the year 2000 that scientists confirmed it. These snakes were not just surviving, they were thriving. A self-sustaining population had taken root. The growth was staggering. From 2008 to 2010, more than 30,000 python sightings were logged. Today, estimates of the population range from 30,000 to 300,000. That range alone shows how elusive they are. For every python seen, many more are hidden, motionless, waiting. Burmese pythons are generalist predators. They eat almost anything they can swallow. Birds, rodents, rabbits, raccoons, foxes, even deer and alligators. If it moves and fits in their mouth, it's food. They grow rapidly, and once they hit a certain size, very little can take them down. One female python can lay 20 to 50 eggs every 2 years, and she can live for 2 decades. That's hundreds of potential offspring from a single snake. And each of those babies grows into a massive muscular predator. The Burmese python is no longer just an exotic species in Florida. It has become part of the landscape. And that's what makes this story so urgent. Because an invasion that took decades to build has pushed the ecosystem to the brink. One study published in 2012 by the U.S. Geological Survey and National Park Service laid it out clearly. Where pythons had spread, mammals had vanished. The snakes didn't just compete for food, they consumed the competitors. And as their numbers grew, they reached a point where they could swallow almost anything they encountered. This isn't just about small animals. One python was caught with a full-grown white-tailed deer inside its stomach. The deer weighed nearly 77 pounds. The python, just under 16 feet long, had dislocated its jaws and stretched its ligaments to the limit to swallow it whole. It took hours, but the snake didn't flinch. That single meal may have lasted it months, but the impact on the deer population lasts much longer. Even alligators, the longtime kings of the Everglades, have found themselves under threat. Some battles between the two result in both creatures dying. Other times, the python wins. One of the most shocking videos to surface showed a python and an alligator in a brutal fight to the death. Both animals pushing themselves to the edge. The python's success isn't consistent, but it's frequent enough to shift power dynamics. The Burmese python has become what some ecologists now call an invasive apex predator. Not just because of its size and strength, but because it pushes out native predators by eating their food, their offspring, and sometimes the predators themselves. Pythons compete with bobcats for small mammals. They eat birds that raccoons once hunted. They even consume baby alligators. This is what ecological imbalance looks like. The native species are not just in decline. They are being structurally replaced in the food web. And unlike native predators, the python has no natural check. It is stealthy, tireless, and endlessly patient. The Everglades haven't just changed. They've lost their rhythm. Species that once served as prey, predator, and scavenger are gone or reduced to unsustainable levels. When that happens, it's not just a few animals disappearing. It's the collapse of ecological functions, seed dispersal, insect control, even nutrient cycling. For all their power and predatory success, Burmese pythons have a built-in vulnerability. Their bodies run on heat. Not from the sun directly, but from the surrounding environment. And in Florida, where heat is almost guaranteed, that weakness doesn't show itself often. But when it does, everything changes. Cold weather is Florida's unlikely ally. When temperatures dip below 59 degrees Fahrenheit, pythons begin to shut down. Their movements slow. Their digestion stalls. Below 50 degrees, they become nearly unresponsive. If it gets any colder, they risk freezing to death. This is a reptile that evolved in the warm, steamy jungles of Southeast Asia. The Everglades mimic that environment much of the year. But the occasional cold snap, those rare winter dips that sweep down through the peninsula, can turn the predator into prey. During these cold spells, pythons are often found curled tightly, their bodies stiff and uncoiled, trying to retain heat. Some make it into burrows left by armadillos or tortoises, where the earth holds on to warmth. Others don't make it at all. They die where they rest, stretched across levees or trapped in open brush. The cold slows them down so much that predators, those that normally wouldn't stand a chance. Cold not only endangers individual snakes, it also disrupts reproduction. Eggs laid in exposed nests can fail to incubate. Clutches are lost. And for a species that relies on frequent and prolific breeding, missing one cycle can set back growth in a region. But here's where it gets complicated. Biologists are starting to notice that some snakes survive cold snaps better than others. After the 2010 freeze, many died, but some made it through. These survivors shared certain traits: burrowing behavior, better fat stores, slower metabolism. Now, genetic markers linked to cold tolerance are beginning to appear more often. That's the real concern. Evolution is in motion. The pythons adapting to Florida's occasional winters could pave the way for them to expand their range further north. That means more states, more habitats, and more ecosystems at risk. So yes, cold can stop a python in its tracks. It can kill them. It can reduce reproduction. But it's not a permanent solution. It's a window, a pause in the momentum of an invasion. And during that pause, native wildlife has a chance to regroup, to strike, to fight back. That's exactly what happened with Loki. He likely died during a cold snap when his body was too sluggish to resist an attack. And the predator who took that chance? It left behind more than a carcass. It left behind a sign that nature was recalibrating. Loki wasn't just any Burmese python. In the ongoing battle to control the python population in Florida, biologists have turned to an unconventional method, using the enemy against itself. They call it the Judas technique. The name might sound biblical, and that's the point. Just like Judas betrayed Jesus with a kiss, these Judas snakes betray their own kind. Loki was one of them. Scientists surgically implanted a radio transmitter into his body. Once healed, he was released back into the Everglades. Loki's instincts did the rest. Like other male pythons, his drive during breeding season was to find a female. The moment he caught her scent, he'd begin the long trek across swamps, grass, and forest, homing in on her location. And all the while, his every move was tracked by GPS. This method gives researchers a unique edge. Instead of blindly combing vast wilderness in search of elusive snakes, they let Loki and others like him lead the way. When Loki found a female, scientists would close in, locate the nest, and remove the eggs. In some cases, they'd euthanize the female python, preventing her from laying dozens, sometimes over 100, new offspring. This tactic has yielded results. Teams have pulled massive clutches from deep in the brush. Some females have been over 15 feet long and weighed more than 100 pounds. The nests are usually buried in secluded, warm areas. Without the Judas snakes, finding them would be like hunting needles in a haystack. But this strategy comes with risk. Every Judas snake is a valuable asset. They're expensive to implant, monitor, and track. Losing one isn't just a setback. It's a blow to the research effort. And in Loki's case, the cost was steep. When scientists followed Loki's signal in late 2022, they expected success. His movements suggested he had located a female. The team was prepared to locate a nest, document it, and take action. But instead, they found the aftermath of something completely unplanned. Loki was dead, and the scene suggested something else had beaten them there. What makes this more chilling is that Judas snakes are not easy targets. Loki was over 13 feet long and weighed 52 pounds. Whatever killed him didn't just overpower him. It subdued him enough to decapitate him and partially hide the body. This raised a new question. Could this vulnerability undermine the Judas program? When the trail camera footage came in, it confirmed what no one expected. A native bobcat had killed a fully grown Burmese python. The same snake that had eluded panthers, dodged traps, and swallowed everything from rabbits to deer, had just been decapitated by a 25-pound wildcat? Bobcats are Florida natives. They've been roaming these woods and swamps for thousands of years, but for the past few decades, they've taken a back seat in the food chain. The Burmese python disrupted everything. These snakes don't just steal food from predators like bobcats, they eat them too. In fact, necropsies on captured pythons have revealed bobcat claws inside their stomachs. That's how unbalanced the scales had become. Biologists had long wondered whether native species might one day learn to deal with the invaders. Could instincts adjust? Could old predators adapt to new threats? Loki's death answered those questions with a sharp and unexpected yes. Bobcats are not built to tackle large prey. A full-grown male weighs about 30 pounds. They usually go after small mammals, rabbits, squirrels, birds. They rely on ambush, speed, and precision. Pythons, by contrast, are brute force. They ambush too, but then they wrap and crush. They kill by suffocation and swallow prey whole. So how did a bobcat beat one of nature's most effective killers? Scientists believe timing played a role. Loki might have been weakened by a recent cold snap, making him slower than usual. That gave the bobcat an opening. A single, precise attack, probably to the head or neck, could have disabled the snake before it could coil or retaliate. But instinct alone doesn't cover what happened next. The bobcat cached the body, partially buried it under pine needles. That behavior isn't just about hiding food. It's a territorial act. It marks ownership. That tells us the bobcat wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, confident enough to take on a super predator and claim victory. And that victory didn't go unnoticed. Wildlife experts across Florida called it a turning point. For years, conservation efforts had relied heavily on human hunters. But now, it looked like the ecosystem was starting to push back on its own. The Everglades aren't just home to adult Burmese pythons, they're a cradle for the next generation of invaders. A single female python can lay up to 100 eggs in one nesting season. These eggs hatch into tiny predators, already equipped with the instincts to hunt, hide, and survive. Stopping them before they hatch is one of the most critical strategies in the fight against the python invasion. And recently, scientists discovered a surprising new ally in that effort: the bobcat. In 2021, a trail camera in Big Cypress National Preserve captured a sequence of events no one had ever documented before. The footage showed a bobcat approaching an unattended python nest. There was no adult snake in sight. The cat cautiously sniffed around, circled, then began tearing into the clutch of eggs. It ate some, it crushed others, and when it was done, it did something even more unexpected. It covered the remains. The behavior mimicked caching, a move predators use to save a meal for later. But in this case, the act may have also served another function: concealing the raid from the returning python. When scientists reviewed the footage, they realized what they had witnessed wasn't just opportunistic feeding. It was a strategic assault. A few days later, the camera picked up the bobcat again, but this time, the nest wasn't undefended. Coiled nearby was a massive female Burmese python, over 13 feet long and weighing more than 110 pounds. She lifted her head, alert and ready to strike. The bobcat, smaller by a factor of 5, kept its distance. There was no attack this time, just a standoff. The predator had become the cautious observer. Eventually, the female was removed by researchers. And what happened next is just as important. The bobcat came back. Over the following weeks, it returned multiple times to check on the area. The nest had become part of its hunting grounds. This was the first documented case of a bobcat preying on python eggs in Florida. Biologists had known for years that bobcats could raid nests of birds, turtles, and even other mammals, but never before had one been observed going after a python clutch. It marked a shift in behavior, a sign of adaptation. Invasive species like the Burmese python thrive in part because native wildlife doesn't know how to deal with them. But here was proof that learning was happening. Slowly, instinct was adjusting. The predator-prey dynamic was starting to evolve. It's hard to overstate the importance of this behavior. Destroying a clutch of eggs doesn't just feed a single bobcat. It prevents dozens of new predators from entering the ecosystem. Every egg smashed is one less snake to decimate Florida's wildlife. Nature, as it turns out, doesn't just stand still in the face of a threat. It reacts. It learns. And sometimes, it fights back in clever, quiet ways. Like one small cat dismantling a nest, meant to unleash 100. The Burmese python may have disrupted the Everglades, but it hasn't conquered it. As sightings of decapitated snakes and raided nests started to increase, scientists and trail cams began picking up another trend. More and more native predators were actively preying on these invaders. The message was becoming clearer. The Everglades were not giving up without a fight. First up, alligators. These ancient reptiles have ruled Florida's wetlands for millennia. They're territorial, powerful, and opportunistic. While it's true that some gators have fallen prey to pythons, the reverse is also happening. Videos have surfaced showing full-grown alligators dragging giant snakes from the water, crushing them in their jaws, and tearing them apart. One clip from Thanksgiving 2024 went viral. A massive gator nicknamed Godzilla wrestled with a python nearly its own length. The footage showed the gator thrashing and subduing the snake with a brutal series of rolls. But this isn't just anecdotal. In 2023, scientists fitted several juvenile pythons with radio transmitters to monitor survival rates. Some signals abruptly stopped, later confirmed to be inside alligator stomachs. The evidence was undeniable. Gators were targeting young pythons and eating them. The old kings of the swamp were far from dethroned. Then came the snakes. Not all snakes in Florida are invasive. In fact, some of them are now stepping up as unexpected python hunters. In May 2021, a pit viper, a native cottonmouth, was found with a juvenile python in its belly. The python had been fitted with a tracker, which led biologists to the cottonmouth. Radiography confirmed the kill. 1 year later, a king snake was found with another young python in its gut. Once again, the transmitter told the story. Even birds are taking part in this resistance. Herons, hawks, and eagles, all skilled hunters, have been seen snatching hatchlings from the ground or water. These aerial predators can't take on an adult python, but they don't have to. By picking off the young, they reduce the snake's chances of growing into a full-fledged threat. Black bears have also entered the equation. In several reserves, bear tracks and signs of struggle were found near dead python bodies. The evidence isn't always conclusive, whether the bear killed the snake or just scavenged it, but the signs are promising. One particular case had researchers convinced. The area was trampled, reeked of bear scent, and the python had injuries consistent with a bear's bite force. Each of these animals plays a different role. Some target eggs, some eat hatchlings, others fight the adults. Together, they form a patchwork of resistance, a kind of natural militia pushing back against the invader. The balance isn't restored yet, but for the first time in decades, it's shifting. What's remarkable isn't just that these attacks are happening, it's that they're happening more often. This suggests learned behavior, adaptation, maybe even evolution at work. native predators aren't just reacting to the threat. They're beginning to incorporate pythons into their diet, their survival strategies, and their ecosystem roles. The Burmese python came to Florida without enemies, but slowly, the Everglades is creating them. In the fight against Burmese pythons, there's one name that keeps coming up: Donna Khalil. She's a legend in Florida's python war. With over 1,000 confirmed kills, Donna isn't motivated by fame or fortune. She's driven by a love for her homeland and a refusal to watch it get swallowed. Khalil was one of the first people selected when Florida launched its pilot python elimination program in 2017. The initiative aimed to recruit experienced outdoorsmen and women to track, capture, and humanely euthanize Burmese pythons in the wild. Donna, already seasoned in hunting and survival skills, immediately stood out. In her first 3 months alone, she and her team captured 163 snakes. That number set the tone. Since then, she's remained at the forefront of the effort, even as more than 100 licensed python hunters now operate across the state. Her approach is both scientific and relentless. She hunts at night, mounted on a self-designed spotting platform attached to her blue Ford F-150. From that elevated perch, she scans the roadside brush with a high-powered light, watching for the telltale glint of iridescent scales. Once a python is spotted, the real challenge begins. Catching a python isn't just a matter of grabbing it. Even a 5-foot snake can coil tightly, bite viciously, and lash out in self-defense. Donna has endured dozens of bites over the years. Her arms and legs bear the scars, reminders of just how dangerous her work is. She's been thrown into swamps, nearly suffocated, and once had to wrestle a 20-foot monster that wrapped around her neck. Each snake is carefully handled. First, a photo is taken for official records. Then, it's bagged and secured in her truck. The final step, euthanasia, is done out of public view, performed in line with strict ethical standards to minimize suffering. It's never easy, and it's never taken lightly. Donna respects these animals, even as she removes them. The job doesn't pay much. Factoring in fuel, gear, and time, many hunters barely break even. But for Khalil, it's not about the money. It's about protecting what's left. She says it best herself. We can't afford to do nothing. Over time, Donna has become a mentor. She trains new hunters, especially young women, teaching them how to move through the terrain, spot pythons in the dark, and handle danger with control. The Burmese python invasion in Florida has never been about one species versus another. It's about an entire ecosystem struggling to rebalance itself under the weight of a problem no one saw coming. And now, after decades of watching native wildlife disappear, scientists, hunters, and animals themselves are trying to push back. But the question still looms. Can this ever truly be won? Human hunters like Donna Khalil are doing critical work, pulling thousands of pounds of snakes out of the Everglades. But for every python removed, there's another hiding, slithering through the brush, laying eggs and multiplying. Radio tracking, nest raids, and night drives are effective, but slow. The terrain is vast, and the pythons are masters of camouflage. Native predators are starting to adapt. Bobcats, alligators, birds of prey, and even other snakes have begun to turn the tables on the invaders. These moments, eggs destroyed, hatchlings eaten, adult pythons killed, offer glimmers of hope. But they're not enough to reverse decades of damage. Meanwhile, biologists continue to test new strategies. AI-powered cameras to spot snakes, heat-sensing drones, releasing more indigo snakes, programs to pay the public for python removals. Every idea adds a layer of resistance, but it's clear this is no short-term fight. There's also the political side. Wildlife agencies face pressure from all directions. Conservationists pushing for more aggressive removal. Reptile advocates defending animal rights. Lawmakers weighing costs. Even the act of euthanizing a snake now comes with scrutiny. Every decision has consequences. And let's not forget the wild card: climate change. As temperatures rise, cold snaps that once helped slow the python's expansion are becoming less frequent. That opens the door for pythons to spread further north, potentially into Georgia or beyond. What began as a South Florida issue could one day become a southeastern U.S. problem. So maybe the goal isn't to win in the traditional sense. Maybe it's to contain, adapt, and outlast. To build an ecosystem that knows how to deal with the python threat, in the same way it knows how to survive droughts, hurricanes, or disease. Florida's wildlife is learning. Its people are fighting. The land is pushing back. And in that resistance, messy, complex, and imperfect, there's a kind of victory. If this helped you, please give it a like and share it with someone who may need it. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's next.